We're recording all this, by the way.
Okay.
Are you recording now?
Yeah.
Were you recording this whole time?
I think so.
Hi, so as you all know, the Oscars recently came and went as they tend to year after year after year. And the best picture, for me at least, I can't speak for anyone else except me and a few of the other people I spoke to, the best picture spotlight seemed to come out of nowhere. People that had even heard of this movie were surprised that it won, and I must confess I hadn't even heard of it. I spoke to one of my friends that works in a local cinema over here, and she said that the film was playing for 2 weeks recently, and it just came and went. No one really went to see it, and obviously they're playing it again now that it's won Best Picture. But it wasn't a real event film. And I think 2015 was a very good year for movies. Bret Easton Ellis, another sort of film critic writer, would definitely disagree with me on that. He sees more movies than I do though, so who knows. But I think it was a good year. I think there were a lot of good nominations. I'm very happy that Fury Road won a few. But Spotlight, it's a bit strange. It seemed to come out of nowhere. So I'm going to talk about this film and what I think of it, what its strengths and weaknesses are, and what impression it left on me. Going into this film, I didn't know what it was about. I'd seen a picture of it in a newsroom. I saw Mark Ruffalo, Rachel McAdams. I think some very good stories can be told with a newsroom, a conspiracy, what have you, the Watergate scandals. All the President's Men's a good example of a film like that. Yeah, so I thought it would just be this interesting newsroom conspiracy movie, and it was. But I had no idea it was about the Catholic Church. So what the film is about, it's all set in 2001. It's about this newsroom uncovering this plot of Catholic priests, and the film is quite a well-told story. It's very captivating in the way it unfolds, and as the journalists get more emotionally involved in the goings-on, so too did I as an audience member. So yeah, it's an interesting movie, it's a well-told story, and I would recommend that you see it to fill out the canon of best pictures, to see what the Academy is awarding these days, and because it's interesting and it's also an important story. That being said, there's a huge problem I have with this movie, and it's especially enlarged by the fact that it's not a problem I had with a lot of the other films that came out in 2015. And that's the flat visual storytelling, the fact that this film had no flair of its own, it had nothing unique about the way it was filmed. It was all very straight, flat. There were some interesting shots of courthouses and the newsroom. I mean, it wasn't an amateur project, but it was boring. It was boring. It wasn't trying to do anything unique with the art direction, which I think is a little bit on the unforgivable side for a film. It will make a film that would otherwise be good feel more boring than it should otherwise. So I didn't make this comparison earlier, but I would compare this film to the 5th season of The Wire. The 5th season of The Wire, which I would also recommend, is set in a newsroom, and The Wire has that same flat filming that Spotlight has, but that's more forgivable in TV. In a film you have 2.5 hours to make your point, and how else are you going to make it other than visually? Now let's compare it to some of the other films that came out in 2015. Let's take Mad Max Fury Road, Steve Jobs, which I saw last night, Straight Outta Compton, which wasn't nominated by any of the Oscars, but maybe should have been. I don't want to go there either though. Straight Outta Compton, and The Revenant. All 4 of these films, while vastly different in settings, have unique visuals to them. They establish their own identity through their shots. You could take a single frame from Fury Road, certainly Fury Road, fantastic example, or The Revenant. Steve Jobs as well, amazingly well shot, has its amazing visual identity, in spite of only having 3 different settings, which are essentially the backstage of where Steve Jobs is about to give his grand speeches, and yet the film is visually captivating. And that's what makes these movies interesting, not just their story. In fact, I've heard Mad Max Fury Road be argued to be a fairly flat film story-wise, but I've seen that film 3 times. I can't even claim to notice because it's so kinetic and interesting. It has so much flair, it's so unique, and that's what film really is. And so I don't think Spotlight being predominantly set in a newsroom or a courthouse or outdoors is a real excuse for it to feel so flat visually. I think they could have done something more. They could have established a few visual motifs. They could have maybe linked it back to the church itself. They could have filmed more churches, more of the inside of churches. Which might sound like a ballsy thing to do, but frankly, if the film's going to put an indictment on the Catholic Church, why not do it visually as well? I'm sorry, And I will interject by saying that I don't think the film is anti-religion. I think it is against the corruption that is going on in this particular church. So, and I think a lot of religious people would also be very, very disgusted by what's going on. So yeah, they could have established that motif. That's a suggestion. Film churches, do something. Anything to make me remember what I saw in this film and not just what I took in. The film is the equivalent to interesting material written in a very flat manner. You know, it's like a book that doesn't really do much to reel you in, but just gives you dry, interesting facts. I will say, I mean, this also goes without saying, the acting in the film was good. They hired a very good cast. Michael Keaton has been in 2 Best Pictures in a row, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I think he was fantastic in this film as a sort of old, semi-rogue journalist that actually might have had a little bit of guilt on his shoulders. So, to conclude, I would recommend this film, but I think if you're going to get anything out of this video, it's that visual storytelling is important and is something that should be noticed, because whether you notice it in your mind or not, you will notice it subconsciously. You know, Fury Road will resonate more with most people than Spotlight visually, and films should resonate visually. That should be a goal of theirs. And anyone that's telling me that Spotlight having more visual storytelling would have distracted from the actual story, I disagree. It would have reinforced it if they'd done it right. Thank you for watching my video. Again, I recommend this film, but with that caveat, there is one thing that it doesn't do that it should have. I hope you've been watching up until this point, and if you have, please stay tuned because I intend on reviewing more films soon. See ya.